y'all, it's Amanda. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about all 4 types of weather in Pokemon, since weather teams have seen a bit of an uptick in the meta recently, with Portland especially. So we'll talk about the benefits of each weather type, usage rates of different weather types on the ladder and showdown, and also key tournament results for each type of weather across 3 major official tournaments in the last 5 weeks of the format. So just in case y'all didn't know, there are 4 different types of weather you can use in Pokemon. There's sun, rain, sand, and snow, which is newly updated in Generation 9. Sun and rain are sort of opposites of each other. So when sun is active on the field, all fire type attacks will have their damage doubled, while all water type attacks will have their damage cut in half. And then the opposite is true for rain. All water type attacks will have their damage doubled, while all fire type attacks will have their damage cut in half. Sand and snow, however, are a little bit different, but also kind of paired in their effects. So sand doubles the special defense of all rock type Pokemon and takes 1/16 HP chip at the end of every turn from all Pokemon except those that are rock, ground, or steel types, or holding the safety goggles item. Similarly, snow doubles the physical defense of all ice-type Pokemon, but it doesn't take any HP chip at the end of each turn. So you can kind of see that sun and rain are typically going to be better weather types for those looking to increase the damage output of their team, while sand and snow are typically going to be better weather types for those looking to increase the bulkiness and longevity of the Pokemon on their team. So how can we decide which type of weather is the best? Well, the truth is that the actual best weather type is the one that fits in the most with your personal preferred playstyle. Weather teams that I have a lot of success with may not work as well for you, and that's okay. Don't be afraid to experiment with some weather rental teams until you find one that works well for you. However, we can run some numbers and analyze a little bit of data to tell us which types of weather are overall more consistent in the current meta and therefore would have a better chance of helping you succeed, either in a best of 3 tournament setting or on the best of 1 ladder on Showdown or in-game. So if we look at usage rates on Showdown for the most common weather setters, we can see a couple of key trends. Number 1 is that usage rates in general for weather setters is low. There aren't a ton of people currently building teams with weather setters on them. You're gonna have between 20 and 25% of the teams that you run into have weather setters on them. So the vast majority of the time, you will not be fighting a weather team. That's actually really good for you if you want to use weather. It means you're significantly less likely to get into a weather war where you're fighting your opponent for control of the weather on the field. So if we look at the main weather setters, which of them are doing better on the ladder? Well, if we compare the usage rates on the ladder as a whole with the usage rates at a high ELO, which is like 1500 plus, then we can deduce from those numbers which weather setters are being used more often by very good players. Those setters are more likely to be considered good in the meta. So if you look here, Torkoal and Pelipper had very slight increases from overall usage to high ELO usage, meaning they were used by higher level players a little bit more, but it's not really a statistically significant difference. This could be because Sun and Rain are relatively easy to team build for, so they're a simple entry point for newer, lower ELO players who want to try out a weather team, and there isn't a ton of difference in how the team would be piloted by a newer versus a more experienced player. On the other hand, Sand had a much more significant increase, with Tyranitar gaining almost an entire percentage point when comparing high level and overall usage rates. We can conclude then that Sand performs well in the meta, but may need to be piloted by a more experienced player to see good results with the team. And finally, Snow actually had a decrease when comparing overall usage rates with usage rates at the high end of the ladder. This tells us a few things. 1, it's a team composition that's likely being used by a larger number of low-level players who struggle to reach higher on the ladder. Abomasnow, like Tyranitar, is beloved by many, and therefore many more players may try to use those Pokemon in less conventional ways than less loved Pokemon like Murkrow and Pelipper. Another explanation could be that Abomasnow is not an easy Pokemon to build a great team with. It struggles with a very middling speed stat, a special attack stat that is okay but not great, and decent bulk that is held back by its 4 times weakness to fire. Now, that quad weakness basically guarantees that in most games, you're gonna have to burn your Terra to keep Abomasnow alive, and therefore you won't have it for any other Pokemon that may need it. Regardless of the reason, it's pretty clear here that Snow is not a particularly consistent weather type when you're trying to get to high ELOs on the Showdown ladder. For some reason, whatever that reason is, high-level players are not choosing to use Abomasnow and the Snow weather type as often as lower level players are. Okay, but I'm more interested in official best of 3 tournaments. I want to win a regionals and I need to know what weather to bring. Well, the answer for best of 3 tournaments is a little bit different. First, let's look at the overall results and then compare across time as the format has progressed. So if you look here, you can see that I've decided to use the median placement across the top 128 teams of each tournament. I used Fort Wayne regionals, EUIC, and the recent Portland regionals to get a snapshot across different points in the development of the meta to most accurately compare performance of these teams. So using median instead of average is a better method of comparison when there might be outlier teams that would drag the average one way or another. When you look at the teams this way, it's pretty clear that Sun teams are by far the most popular, but interestingly, they are not the best performing. Over all 3 tournaments, Rain teams actually had the best showing. Only 12 people ran Rain teams, but they had a median placement of 56. In this case, it's probable that Sun's popularity actually hurt its performance. When a team archetype becomes common, it's likely to be picked up by a lot of lower level players, thereby kind of hurting its average or median performance, while more niche team archetypes, like Rain, might be used more by high level players, allowing it to have a higher median or average performance. Snow and Sand here were relatively similar, with median placements of 83 and 84 respectively, and much lower usage rates than Sun. Since the highest placement I used in this dataset was 128, that's a pretty poor showing, but it is expected since Snow and Sand give much less advantage to their users than Sun and Rain do, and are therefore relatively more difficult to pilot to victory. Okay, but the meta is changing really rapidly, so how did the weather perform more recently? Well, interestingly, weather as a whole has become more popular as the meta has progressed, and generally performed better as well. So as you can see here, Sun started out the format extremely dominant and was much more popular than the other 3 weather types, which performed pretty similarly bad at Fort Wayne, while Sun had a pretty good finish. Then, 2 weeks later at EUIC, Sun was significantly less popular and also had a much lower median finish, performing worse than both Rain and Snow. Sand also saw a drop in median placement, but the real star of EUIC was the Rain teams. Rain went from a median placement of 107 at Fort Wayne, which is pretty bad, to a median placement of 52 at EUIC, which is phenomenal. Snow also saw a large uptick here in performance, but it lagged considerably behind the Rain teams. But from EUIC to Portland regionals, every single weather type increased its median placement. Proof that weather as a whole is on the rise in the meta right now and performing much better in the meta than it has in the past. So Sun saw a huge resurgence in performance, likely due in large part to its first and third place finishes in the tournament. Rain came in at a really close second, and while it didn't top cut, the teams that did make it to the top 128 had consistently higher placement than the other 2 weathers. Sand had a really huge jump as well to finish with the 3rd highest median placement, probably in large part to Terraflying Terrablast Tyranitar's really positive matchup into Great Tusk, which is exceedingly popular on Sun teams. And finally, even though Snow finished in 4th place with Nick's incredibly interesting and really fun-looking Abomasnow and Choice Specs Blizzard Iron Bundle team, it actually had the worst showing of all 4 weather types at Portland. This type is actually the most interesting result to me because it shows that in the right hands, Snow can perform very well and even be steps away from the finals, but in less skilled hands, Snow is much less likely to succeed. And I think that shows in the fact that Snow had a 4th place finish here at Portland, but overall its median placement was worse than all 3 of the other weather types. So that's kind of what I mean when I refer to whether a team is consistent or not. It's not an indictment of whether a certain type of team is good or bad, because at the end of the day, even good players can pilot bad teams to victory, and bad players can lose with good teams. But a consistent team archetype is one that over time, in many games, when used by players of all different skill levels, can deliver more wins than losses, right? And at the end of the day, like I said, you should always play the team you feel the most comfortable with and the team that you have the most fun with. But if you want to try out a weather team and you're not sure where to start, I would recommend looking for a Sun or a Rain team before you look for a Sand or Snow team. Those are just significantly more likely to get you more wins than the other 2 weather types. So don't forget to leave a comment down below to tell me what you think. If you think anything differently down below, whatever you want. As always, like this video and subscribe to the channel to see more like it. I'll see y'all later. Bye!